All right, hello everyone. My name is Christy, and along with Christina, we'll be presenting today's workshop. First, we have our link to the slides. I think one of the mentors can put it into the chat. So a couple minutes for that. All right, and then our membership portal attendance code is Adventures Out There. And also don't forget to fill out the feedback form. We do have a raffle for Amazon gift cards if you fill it out. All right. Also, another announcement. By now, you should have your group on Discord. So if you haven't been checking Discord that much, it'd be a good idea to check that and see who your group mates are. So we really encourage you to plan a time to meet together, start thinking about ideas for your app. I'm really excited to see what y'all come up with. Another reminder is every Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. Pacific time, we will have work sessions. There will be mentors there. If you have any questions, you're stuck on something with your app, this is a perfect time to get some help. And yes, of course, another reminder, anytime during this workshop, if you're confused, please ask us questions. You can either drop it in the chat or just ask aloud. And we will have a lot of code along during this session. We don't encourage you to copy the code. It's better just to listen and try to get the understanding. We do have all the code up on our README, and which is linked at the bottom there. So if you do need to refer to it later, it will be there. And these are the tools that we're using, VS Code and Expo. So today we'll be learning what is React navigation and then diving into a few different types of navigators. Since today's content is a little shorter, we're going to do a longer recap. So I'm going to launch a poll just to review what we've talked about in Hacksprint so far. So I have launched it, and I'm going to give a few minutes to answer that. I guess I can put on the lo-fi again.
What's wrong? Can't you talk? Hey, I don't bite. You and me, we're in a club now.
Right. Yeah, I shared the poll results, and I also have a couple slides to go with these, so we're just going to go through them. So for the first question, what do you need to type in your terminal to start a new Expo project? So the correct answer was the first one, Expo Init Adventure App. The other one, so Expo Start is actually like when you've already created the app and you want to start it up so you can see how it looks like. You do Expo Start, but you don't need to say the name of the app, just Expo Start. CD Adventure App is to change directories into the folder, and then Expo Adventure App is just incorrect. It doesn't mean anything. Yeah, so another thing to note, so for command line commands, you might see instructions for like yarn add and then the library name, or expo install the library name, or npm install. the library name. The most important thing for that is just to be consistent, because if you mix up using npm versus yarn, like it can be a little bit hard to untangle. But as long as you use one of them, and only one of them, it should be okay. And like this is true for every member of your project. Expo install, I think, actually maps to yarn. And these are all package managers that you can use to add libraries to your project. Okay, next for question 2. What do you use the curly braces for in a JSX expression? And this is B, to use JavaScript values inside of JSX. So I think in the previous workshops, it's a little confusing what the curly braces are for. And when you see, well, yeah, so one use of, or the use that was in the question is to use a JavaScript value inside of JSX. So JSX is what you see with the angle brackets. See things like angle brackets text, close angle brackets text. And then if you want to use JavaScript, so either a JavaScript variable, a function, expression, anything, you can put it inside curly braces. And that means it's JavaScript. Otherwise, it'll just be text. So if you have hello name without the curly braces, it just means actually name and not hello Russell. So I did notice like one person answered to specify props in a component. This is pretty common actually, because you'll usually pass in a prop as a variable. So for example, here on the left, where I have the JavaScript variable explorer name, and then I put it in these curly braces because it's a variable and I pass it in as a prop, but this is actually not necessary. A prop can also be a string, such as the example on the right. Yeah, and feel free to stop at any time for any questions. Yeah, so another use of curly braces, like they're just everywhere, is to mark the start and end of function bodies. So this is an example where I have a function with no parameters that just console logs, here snipe. And then curly braces are also used in objects. So we have these properties and values all put together and enclosed in curly braces. So I think it gets really confusing when you like put them all together. So for example, this is pretty common where you have this onClick prop and you want to pass in a JavaScript function. So to start the JavaScript function, you need to use these curly braces because it's inside a JSX expression. And then inside the function as well, there's another curly brace. And then this also applies for if you want to pass in an object as a prop. So the first curly brace again is the start of the JavaScript value. And then the second curly brace is the start of the JavaScript object. Okay, third question. Correct way to set the friend prop on Wilderness Explorer component. Correct answer is A, friend equals, and then in quotes, plant. So B is incorrect because fish could be a JavaScript variable, but then it has to be in the curly braces, and then it's not a string because it doesn't have quotes. And then C is incorrect because the tiny mole should be a JavaScript expression, but tiny space mole like can't be the name of a variable. And then the last one is also, I also noticed that I copied it over wrong. It should be props equals friend all, but both of them are incorrect because you need, well, if you want to pass in a JavaScript object, it needs the extra curly braces again. And then if the name of the prop is friend, it should be friend, not props. Yes, so just to review this is how the component might look like. You have props and then props.name, props.friend, and then we pass it in with the name of the prop like this before the equal sign. And then the last two questions, a button that changes color and a text input box. This is pretty tricky. And the answer to both of them is state, because state is something inside a component that can change versus props, which is passed into the component from outside. Technically, like you can make both of these props and then have it be controlled by its outside component, but I think for these examples, that's pretty uncommon. So a text input box controls what changes inside the text box, and then the balloon button color, the button probably should change its own color when it's pressed. Yeah, does anyone have questions on these? Okay, if not, let us move on to today's content. Onward to React navigation. So far in all of our workshops, we've only made apps with a single screen. So like this beautiful Twitter-like or Footer app that only has one screen. It's very beautiful, but only one screen. So, and we could make multiple screens. We learned how to make different screens, but there is no way to navigate between them. So yeah, this is a point of React navigation. So React navigation is a library for routing and navigation in React Native apps. So the navigation part means that you can switch between screens. Like if you notice in this GIF, if you click something, it changes screens. You click things on the bottom, changes screens, back buttons, things like that. That's all done in React navigation. And then routing means if this was a web app, like if this was a website and you click on something, it takes you to another page. So React navigation also does that, but we're going to mainly focus on the mobile app part. And this is maintained by Expo. So that's why we recommend using this library for navigation. There are other libraries, but this one, like documentation is pretty nice and it works well with Expo because it's made by Expo. Yeah, so before you get started using React navigation, like make sure you install it. So I know this has a lot of text, but yeah, we cannot emphasize more that make sure you install it because otherwise you won't be able to use it. So you'll need to install the React navigation library as well as a bunch of dependencies. There's some instructions on the React navigation docs, and then depending on the type of navigators you'll use, you also need to install those. So we're going to do a lot of polls for this workshop. So here's another one, just to really emphasize what the little that we have talked about so far. This one is pretty short, so I'm just going to give like a minute. Oh, I realize the question cut off, but let's say the first one is library used for routing and navigation in React native apps, and the other one was supposed to be React web apps. Okay, 5 more seconds. Okay. Thank you everyone for answering. Yeah, so React navigation, library for routing and navigation, React native apps. Notably, it's not for React web apps, just for React native. The second one, yes, Expo install at React navigation /stack. So even though like this error looks like you should follow the instructions, because maybe you don't know what this means. Like you don't know what unable to resolve module means. It just means that the the library does not exist yet, so you have to install it. So that's why expo install React navigation slash stack is the correct answer. Yeah, don't follow. Well, you can follow these instructions, but it's not really. It's not likely that that's the actual issue. And yeah, you could also cry. All right, and I think Christina is going to pick it up from here.
Yes, 1 second. All right, so now we are going to talk about actual navigation and how to use it. So we're going to be exploring a couple of different navigators, as well as talking about how we format them and a couple more interesting things you can do with navigation. All right, so the first thing that I'll cover is navigation container. And navigation container is a component that lays out the blueprint for how we navigate between screens. So this allows us to format our navigation on our user interface, making it a lot easier to use and pretty uniform regardless of how you design your navigator. So if you take a look to the left, this would be perhaps in your app.js, so it renders on your simulator. But as you can see in the return statement, we have a function called myNavigation function that is contained within the navigation container. So this will help with formatting of whatever function you have in here. All right, so now I'm going to quickly talk about screens before we move into how to move between them, as well as the actual types of navigators. So what is a screen? So let's take a look at Slack right now. So this is a GIF that I made, and as you can see, I'm clicking through the different buttons at the bottom, such as right now I'm on You, Home. For a second here, I click on Hack Buddies, and yeah, so the screen will I'll kind of go into a more formal definition, but something that you might notice is that on Slack, there was the home screen, the DM screen, and also the mentions screen. And these are all examples of what it means to have screens. So like, yeah, as you can see in the GIF again here. Yeah, so you already know a lot about screens and navigation just by using your smartphone. Okay, so kind of going into a more formal definition, screens are components, but just extra thick. So a screen is a component made up of smaller components like text, button, and more. And all of these smaller components are contained within a view. So just like how you learned last week in the components workshop, we saw this diagram to the left where we're able to see Twitter posts and how all of these small little items, such as each post, the icons make up the entire screen. Okay, so now I'll move into how to move between these. Okay, so before you might be freaked out of all of this code right here, I will just try my best to break it down. So in this case, we're going to be talking about screen components. And on this slide, I have a function called WildernessExplorer after Russell from Up. And this function contains, or essentially is a screen component. So I have certain keywords boxed here that I will talk about more in depth. So I'll first talk about the onPress function. So one thing to also note is that all of this onPress and what like these navigate, all of this is contained within a button component. So essentially you can probably make an intuitive guess and say that, oh, like when I see a button, I can press it and maybe I'll navigate somewhere. So I'll just break that down a little bit more in the next slide. So for onPress, this is much like how Christy said in the beginning, like on click in her example. So this is a function for touch gestures. And what this means is as we use smartphones, like everything that we do to interact with it has to do with how we touch it, how we tap it, like certain, how we press on the icons to navigate to different screens. So that's exactly what onPress does. So it allows for, it essentially is able to take that physical touch or press or whatever it may be, and then convert it into something that we can use in React Native, and that's the onPress function. And then within it, you can do whatever you would like to do. And in this case, we are using navigation. So these are just some examples from Snapchat. Like if you press on like the location button, you can open Snap Maps and additionally with the rest of them. Okay, so now I will talk about this navigation term. So you might have noticed that in the first code demonstration I showed, we had this function WildernessExplorer, and then this takes in a unique argument into the function, and this argument is in curly braces, and it says navigation. So what does this mean? I'm so glad that we reviewed props in such detail, because this navigation is a prop that's passed down to every screen. So this is a prop, and then here it shows up again. So remember that WildernessExplorer is our screen. So navigation is the prop that's going to be passed into our function. And this function is representative of our WildernessExplorer screen. And we have a little Russell here to indicate that. Okay, so next I'll talk about this .navigate part, and then we can put it all together. So I'm going to take a quick detour on our adventure and talk about this navigation prop. So each screen component needs a navigation prop. So there are many functions within this prop that can aid in navigation to different routes. For example, there was the function navigate, and there's also the function go back. And there's a lot more, and I linked React documentation here for more functions that you can call on the navigation prop. So yeah, just note that like right here it says navigate, and if we think about the previous slide, we have navigation or prop.navigate. So that's just one example of how we're using a function on the prop. Okay, so now I'll just summarize that really quickly. So again, we have navigation.navigate, and then in parentheses, explore profile. So this is a function that is called on the navigation prop, like mentioned in the previous slide. So explore profile indicates the next screen component we want the user to navigate on upon pressing the button. So yeah, to quickly summarize all of that together, because I did break it down quite a bit. This line right here, this line right here pretty much dictates a lot of how we're going to navigate. So we have on press. So when we press a button, a certain action will happen. And the action is going to be navigation, which is a prop. And I'm going to call the navigate function on the prop. And I'm going to navigate to explore profile. And it can be whatever you want it to be in this string right here. Okay, so now that we have the basics of navigation out of the way, I will be talking about our first navigator, which is called the stack navigator. Okay, so I have a GIF of Tinder to show what a stack navigator is. Don't read too closely, please. So in that little purple circle at the top, I want you to notice that in the main chat, like right here, I click on someone's chat, and then automatically there appears this like go back button, and I press it and then it brings me back. So that is a common example of how a stack navigator works. Yes, I will move on before you have an opportunity to read them. Okay, so what is a stack? So then going into these like more formal diagrams, essentially what happens is you have whatever screen you're looking at on the far left, and then say you click on a button on this screen. If that happens, it'll add another screen on top, kind of in a stack, the way like a stack of books works, or the data structure stack works. So then automatically there's a back button that appears, and then if you click the back button, we can return back to the first stage screen here. And then this third icon right here shows up, shows like if I clicked another button on the second screen, and then I would return to the one before. Okay, so one way that we can think about this is that stack navigation is just like a stack of books. So say I have some books, some textbooks stacked right here. I can add a book to the stack. So say I added university physics to the stack, and then I can also remove the book from the stack. And so we can make an analogy such that like adding a book to the stack is the same thing as clicking on a button and then that bringing you to another screen on top of your previous screen. And then we can also click go back, and go back on like Tinder, for example, go back, I was able to remove that, that like chat with that specific person and go back to the main chat page. So that's the same thing that happens here. All right, so now to actually use the Stack Navigator. So here are some important functions. Firstly is create Stack Navigator, and this you'll have to import, and this provides a way for your app to transition between screens via the stack that I just described. And some props that this navigator accepts are name, component, as well as options, or as well as a prop called options, which is used for customization. And we'll get to that a little bit later. So yeah, the most important things to keep in mind are name and component. All right, and then one more function that I wanted to talk about is navigation.goBack. I mentioned this just a little bit on our detour for our adventure, and with this go back function again is called on the navigation prop, and this closes the active screen and moves back to the previous screen or the screen that was under it in the stack. So again, like Tinder, like I was on that chat page and then I clicked go back and I was able to go back to the original page with all the chats listed out. One more really interesting thing that I wanted to bring up is that in the header, it will actually automatically include a back button on the UI if it is possible to move back. Okay, so lastly, to set it up, there are just some things that you can use for reference, but in the command line, you would need to install this, and then within your JS file, you need to import create Stack Navigator from that library. Alrighty, so now I will start demoing our first Stack Navigator in VS Code. All right, do you see VS Code? Yes, okay, perfect. So let me just take you through the way that I set up my file. So I have this folder called demos, and then I have my app.js, which is where my components will actually be rendered onto the simulator screen. And then I also have a separate stack.js file, and we're going to start implementing our Stack Navigator on stack.js. So I'll just close this side tab so you guys don't see it. Okay, so let's talk about stack.js. So first I import all of these necessary libraries. So I have React from React, and then I have all these components like view, button, text, etc. that I import from React Native. And then lastly, the most crucial line in terms of the creation of our navigation is the import create Stack Navigator from, So in my example, I'm going to navigate between two screens in my app. The first screen is Wilderness Explorer, and the second screen is going to be my Explorer profile, because if you're a Wilderness Explorer, you would like to learn more about what it means to be a Wilderness Explorer, but also check out like what awards or badges that you have yourself, which would be on your profile. All right, so let's get started. I'm gonna start by doing by working on the Wilderness Explorer page or screen first. And you guys kind of saw what this looks like already in the examples before. So if I have a function, Wilderness Explorer, oops, return. So for now, I'm not gonna put any arguments in yet. So as you guys know, we have to contain what we write within a view. And I will just put some text in here so that we know what screen we're on. So I do like, I'm on the Wilderness Explorer screen, just so we know and for demonstration purposes. All right, and then I'm gonna add a button. And so this button, this button is going to allow us to switch between different screens. So, all right, so what do we want our button to say? I'm gonna use this prop title. And I'll just title it something pretty straightforward, like go to profile page or profile screen. All right, so this makes sense. Let me, yeah, so that makes sense. This will have text on it and we'll have a button that says go to profile screen. And maybe I'll just export it and then see what happens. So when you have functions that you want to use across different pages, so I have stack.js here, but I want it to be rendered on app.js. So I'm going to export it down here, and then within app.js, I'm going to import it. So I'm going to do import WildernessExplorer from stack.js. I think that should work. And one other thing that I'll talk about is that within our export default function app, which is where everything is rendered again, I imported navigation container because that's what we want our navigation to be contained in. And then I already have the tags here. So within these tags, I want it to contain I want it to contain the Wilderness Explorer. All right, so let's save this and see what happens. Uh-oh.
Your export default, yeah, in your export default line, remove the parentheses.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so that's interesting. Like we didn't use the safe area view, so it's like all the way at the top. So I'll just, for now, I'll just add some styling to our view. So I'll just quickly do this. I'm going to add flex one. I'm going to justify content, which to the center. And then I will align items center as well. So let's see if that helps us. Okay, yeah, perfect. So now we're in the center of the screen and we have a statement that says I'm on the Wilderness Explorer screen. So we clearly know what screen we're on. And then it says go to profile screen, which right now it doesn't go anywhere. Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to move on to our second screen, which I'm going to call function profile. Also going to wrap this in another view. I'll just copy what I have up here so it's a little bit easier. And I'll have the same like styling with the center style, except this time I'm going to just switch this up. I'm on the Explorer profile screen, and then I'm going to go to Perfect. So now this will add another screen and it has the same idea. So now I'm going to kind of transition into our stack navigator. So right now we have two screens and but we still don't have a way to like navigate between them. So let's figure out how to do that. I'm going to create a function called myStack. And this is where all the stack navigation and the create stack navigator comes into play. So I'm actually going to create a variable called const stack equals create stack navigator, just so it's a little bit easier and not too many words everywhere. So yeah, so this variable stack calls this function create stack navigator. So in our return statement, first, just like how we did in app.js, we wrapped our Wilderness Explorer function within the navigation container. So similarly, I'm going to wrap it. I'm going to wrap whatever we have in stack navigator. All right. And the other really cool component that I mentioned earlier is stack screen. So stack.screen is going to indicate the different types of screens you have. So I have stack.screen. Let's do the, so I have one stack.screen and it's going to have some name to it. And it's also going to have some component to it. Yeah, and in this case, we have two screens, right? We have Wilderness Explorers, and then we also have profile. So I'm just going to copy that again because we have two screens. So right now, I don't really know what to put in name and component. So I'll go back to it later. Now I'm going to return back to our first two functions. Firstly, I want to be able for the button to actually navigate to the profile screen. So what am I going to do is I'm going to utilize the onPress function, which I think we went into a lot of detail earlier. So, okay, I have it set up, and now I will do now based on the line that you saw earlier, I'm going to do navigation dot navigate. Let's do like let's do my Explorer profile. All right, so now this is giving me an error. So why is it? In this case, it's because we need to still pass in navigation as a prop to our function. So there we go. And now the error went away. Wait.
You also need the equal sign between onPress and the curly
Oh, yes,
braces.
yes.
Yeah.
Error did not go away. Okay, now we're good. So yeah, okay, so now onPress, we're going to be able to navigate somewhere else. So, okay, well, just ignore that for now because I will go and fix the rest of our functions. So now for our profile, we also want the same onPress. And I'm also going to import, or not import, take the navigation prop as an argument. So I'm going to navigate instead of my Explorer profile, I'm going to navigate to, so I'm going to use the other function that we talked about, which is go back. So navigation.go back. Yes. All right, so this is really what makes it like a stack navigator in a way, because we are on a screen and then we can go back to the previous screen. All right, so now let's deal with the my stack. So again, to reiterate what happened in our two functions up here, we were able to create two screens and buttons that navigate to a certain location and then go back. So now for the name, I'm going to call this Wilderness Explorer because, yeah, I'm going to call this Wilderness Explorer, and then I'm going to take the component as Wilderness Explorer because, again, this is in JSX, but we need to use a JavaScript function, so we're going to in curly braces. All right, and then we're going to do my Explorer profile for the name of our other screen, and then the component will be profile. Okay, now I'm going to export my stack instead of the Wilderness Explorer. And then within app.js, I'm going to change it. So I'm going to import my stack from this file, and then I'm within the navigation container, I'm going to replace it with my stack. Okay, now let's save this and see what happens. So take a look at the simulator on the right. I'm on the Wilderness Explorers page. There's like a header at the top that indicates that I'm on that page. And then it also says I'm on the Wilderness Explorer page. So I'm going to click on go to profile screen. Oh, and there we are. This is my Explorer profile. It says I'm on the Explorer profile screen. And I can easily click back, or I can click this button, additional button that I added down here. So kind of like that Tinder example I had. If you clicked on a chat, you could go into the chat and then you can navigate back to the main screen of chats. All right, so that is it for the stack navigation example. So I think I'm going to stop and ask if there are any questions first, and then I have a quick poll that I wanted to do. Okay. If not, then it is poll time. Christy, can you launch the poll? Or doesn't mean okay. So this question's about on-press, and we'll do like maybe a minute or two. Yes. Let's give it like a few more seconds. All right, so I'll end the poll right now, and most people got it correct. I think there may have been an error in copying over the poll, but the correct answer was C, which is navigation.navigate. And then I think the my part got cut off, and so did the rest of the curly braces. But yeah, you guys mostly had the right idea. Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. And then I think it is time for a break. So we can take 5 minutes, is that good? Oops. So just come back at 6:55.
Do we have time to do 10 minutes instead, actually?
Oh yeah, sure. So at 7?
Yeah, that's a good number.
Okay. All right, it is time. It is time to continue with React. Okay, so we just finished talking about stack navigation. So now I'm going to move into tab navigation, which is quite honestly definitely the most used and I think easiest to understand as well, because you've seen this a million times. Okay, so on Instagram, I made this other GIF, and you can see that as I navigate between all the tabs at the bottom, such as search tab, the reel tab, the shopping tab, and then my profile tab, you can see that the different screens show up as you click through them. And yeah, so again, to reiterate this, we have another graphic right here. So if you click on, say, the left tab, we have a different screen, and then the right tab, also a different screen. I just saw the comment, and it is not, but I wish. Important functions that we need for creating our tab navigator is firstly createBottonTabNavigator. So this is quite similar to our createStackNavigator. It's just they have a lot of similar functionalities. So again, this is a way for us to transition between screens via tabs, either on the header or on the bottom, which you saw on the Instagram, which the bottom had all of those tabs that we navigated through. And once again, the tab navigator has name, component, and then also options. And these options are for customization again. So a very similar idea with the createStackNavigator. Okay, so now to talk about setting it up, we have a similar npm install, and then also we have to import createBottonTabNavigator into our app.js or tab.js or whatever you want to call it. All right, so now I'm going to go into another demonstration. All right, so you can see my VS Code now, and you already know how the layout is, so I won't go over that. But so app.js is we'll be modifying this as well later, but I'll start with just the tabs. So again, I imported React from React, and I have all of these components like text, button, etc. And I also have the import createBottonTabNavigator. Okay, so once again, I'm going to create 2 screens that we're going to navigate between via a tab navigator. The first one, again, is going to be our Wilderness Explorers function. Very similar to before, I'm just going to return something similar. I will actually copy over some of this code to make it a little bit easier. So we have the same view, and I will also have some text on here, but I'm not going to include the button because in this case, we are navigating between the 2 screens from the bottom tabs, not on a button. So I just have my view and I have my text. Okay, perfect. So now our first screen is done. Now I'm going to move on to our second screen, which again is our profile screen. So let me just rename this. And then I will just also rename this part. I'm on the Explorer file. Okay, so now that our 2 basic pages are completed, I'm going to move on to a similar thing that we did with Create Stack Navigator, except this time I'm going to do Create Bottom Tab Navigator. So I'm going to construct a new variable called tab and call the function create bottom tab navigator. All right. Similar to before, I am also going to create a my tabs function because, again, we don't have a way to navigate between these 2 screens yet. So we need an additional way to work through this, which is a very similar function to what we had for my stack. I'm going to return a tab.navigator. This is going to contain each of our tab.screen. So again, remember how in this my stack function, we have our stack navigator, which contains both the 2 screens because we're navigating between 2 screens. So similarly for our tab, we're going to have 2 screens as well that we need to navigate between. So very similar stuff. So firstly, I'm going to title my first screen Wilderness Explorers. And I also have a component. So I'm going to title my component. I will just tab this so it's easier for you guys to see. So component, again, this will be enclosed by curly braces, and the component will be the function Wilderness Explorers. It's in curly braces because we're trying to use a JavaScript function within our JSX. And then I have a second tab.screen. And this one will be for profile. So again, I have name, and I'm just going to call it my Explorer profile. And for the component, I'm going to get the profile function. All right. Now, the last thing that I would like to do is export my tabs. So again, I'm going to export it, export the default in my tabs. Okay, so now for it to actually render, because as you can notice on the simulator, we're still on our stack navigator. That's because we haven't imported it into app.js yet. So similarly, I'm going to write the line, import my tabs from tabs.js. Okay, and I'm going to replace my stack with my tabs in the navigation container. So now I'm going to save this, and then,
Tab.js.
Wait, sorry, can you say that again?
It'd be
it's
tab.js,
tab.js.
not tab.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so tab.js. There we go. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. So I'm on the Wilderness Explorer screen, and you can see that there are 2 tabs at the bottom, Wilderness Explorers and My Explorer Profile. So if I click on My Explorer Profile, I'm on the Explorer profile screen. So let's maybe talk about what's going on. So so within each of our functions, again, these represent screens. So this represents the wilderness, or this is the Wilderness Explorer screen. So this means that the text I'm on the Wilderness Explorer screen shows up. Okay, so, but that's different from the name that is given to the tab.screen, because the tab.screen that's contained within the navigator is going to label our header or our tabs down here. So if I like change this to that, you'll see that in the very bottom. It's very small, but it says Wilderness Explorers, 2 exclamation marks. So that's what the difference between name under tab screen is versus like this text or the names of the functions. All right, so that is it for the tab navigation demonstration. I think there is another poll. Uh-oh. Okay. Oh man, the picture didn't load, but I guess it still works. Yeah, I'll just give like another minute. And this time I'll get the percentage right, or like the number of people right. I saw that in the chat. Okay, I will go ahead and end the poll now because most of you have voted. All right, I'm going to share the results right now. So you'll see that most people, 82%, got it correct. And the right answer would be D, which is the last one on here. And this is because name needs to have a string as its input. So that's why it's correct down here. And then the component needs to be wrapped in curly braces because it's a JavaScript function that we are using within JSX. So for the first one, like A, the reason why, so one person did vote for that. And the reason why that's incorrect is because wilderness component equals Wilderness Explorers isn't wrapped in curly braces. And then, okay, no one went for B, that's good. And then for C, okay, so in this case, 2 people flipped it. So name contains a string, whereas component in this case has a JavaScript function in it. So it's important to make that distinction. Okay, I will stop sharing the poll results now. Okay. All right, so we are almost through all the navigators. The last one is drawerNavigator. Okay, so here's a GIF, and pay attention to the upper left-hand corner, and this is my Reddit. I don't have very many comments because I don't really interact, I just observe, so I am slightly ashamed, but it is okay. So you'll see that when I click on the upper left-hand corner, the drawer toggles out and gives me a lot more information. I know, Anna. I should have blocked it out. Yes, okay. I should have blocked out the people's names on Tinder too, but you know, sometimes it'd be like that. Okay, so so you'll notice that you can also click on the X in the upper left corner and then the drawer closes and like the drawer is toggled. All right, so now let's move on to a little bit more definition. So as you saw with the Reddit example, we have the drawer on the left, and if you click on something, it will show up, and then you can X out of it to toggle out of the drawer. So you've definitely seen this a lot. Reddit is one example, but also like Slack does it, and probably a bunch of others. All right. Yeah, I know. I was thinking that I was exposing, starting with the Tinder thing, but you know, I will sacrifice myself for hack. All right, so some important functions that I wanted to bring up are navigation.openDrawer. So again, you'll notice that this is a function that's being called on the navigation prop. So before we had navigation.goBack, but now we have .openDrawer. So this is very self-explanatory. It opens the drawer, which is like, for example, on the Reddit GIF, I clicked in the upper left-hand corner and my profile showed up. So similarly, we also have close drawer, and we also have navigation.toggleDrawer. And I feel like they're named pretty straightforwardly. So close drawer will close the drawer, and then toggle drawer will either open it or close it depending on its current state. Okay, and then some more important functions. We have a create drawer navigator. So you might notice that there is quite a trend that all of these navigators have, and it's this basic function right here. So this function creates a way for our app to transition between screens through the drawer. And again, the basic props that this accepts are name, component, and options. So very similar to everything that we've talked about. Unfortunately, or not unfortunately, I guess just another thing is that we have more props. So another prop that I wanted to talk about is drawerContent. So this is a prop for rendering content in your drawer, such as navigation items. So in that Reddit example, when I opened my profile, there was like certain pieces of information that were in there. So drawerContent is able to sort of look at the type of navigation items you want in the drawer. Yes, okay, so then additionally, you can also customize drawer content, such as you can use drawer item list, drawer scroll view, and a lot more, but those are the main ones that I'll focus on today. And these I'll talk about a little bit more in the next slide and how we can use them to customize our content within the drawer. Okay, so I have a snippet of code here. You'll notice that we have drawerContent scroll view, and drawerContent scroll view makes sure that when you scroll through the drawer that it's viewed very nicely, and like they don't have like chunks missing from the scroll, and it like stays with, yeah. And then the second item that is stored within scroll view, we have drawer item list. And so this lists out each item within our props. And then lastly, there's a drawer item within our item list. So that's when you want like an additional item to be added to your drawer besides the props that are listed up here. So quickly to go over what this like ellipses and props and a curly brace is. So essentially, I wouldn't worry too much about it at this stage, but the ellipses represent passing in all the props from the component. So yeah, if you have more questions about it, feel free to message us or ask later, but it just makes sure that everything that we want in our, that's laid out in our functions are put onto our drawer. Okay, so setting it up. Again, we're going to install this library, and then we're going to import these items from that library into our app.js or drawer.js. So most importantly, I would say, is the Create Drawer Navigator. These additional ones, these bottom, or the 3 down here, those are for customizing your drawer content. So that is up to you. But in my demo, I'm going to be customizing it. So I will include these. Okay, time for a demo. Okay, so right now I have, let me rearrange some things. Right now I have a tab and stack open, so I'm just gonna open my navigator really quickly, and then I have, if you're in this situation, just create a new JS file called drawer.js. And oh no, I forgot to delete all of this. Okay. Pretend you didn't see that. Okay, so we have 3 libraries to import again. We have React and React. We have our like the different components like text, view, button, and then lastly this import statement, which I just talked about. So all of these are very important to make sure that you don't get the error that Christy pulled you guys on before. So once again, I'm going to be navigating between 2 different screens. One screen is going to be Wilderness Explorers, and then we have our profile screen. So I'm, again, going to write out the same thing. And the reason why we are sticking with the same example is just so you can see how it varies between every single type of navigation. Okay, I'm just going to copy in these view components so that it's a little bit faster. But again, we will wrap the rest of, or we will contain all of our components within a bigger view. And yeah, okay, so I have some text here. I'm gonna style it a certain way. And then another thing that you probably saw in like the Reddit example is that there is a button somewhere located on the screen that allows you to open the drawer or toggle the drawer. So I'm actually going to create 2 buttons for the sake of demonstration. And the first button, I'm going to title it for the purposes of opening the drawer. And then I'm going to do another one for toggling the drawer, which in a lot of ways are very similar, those 2 actions, but I just want you guys to see every single possible situation. So I have so this button, as you've seen before with Stack, it has a prop called title, and I'm just going to call it open drawer. And I'll show you in a little bit. So title is what shows up physically on the UI. So you will see the term open drawer. And then I'm going to do another on press. Okay, so I have on press. Navigation dot navigation dot open drawer, which is a very important function that we talked about before. All right, and now I'm going to add another button, and this button is going to be for toggling, and just so we can see all of these different functions in action. All right, so we have these 2 buttons, and we have navigation, open, and toggle. One more thing that you may have already caught is that we can't use this navigation right here because we actually haven't passed it in yet to our function. So I will do that really quickly. And that will prevent any errors from coming up. So by passing in this prop, it allows us to use it here for open drawer and toggle drawer. Okay, so now I'm gonna add our profile function. Function profile. I'm gonna keep profile pretty simple because there is a lot of stuff going on. So I'm just gonna copy this information, and actually I'm gonna take out these buttons. And let me just, I'm on. Okay, so profile screen is going to be very straightforward. It's just going to have some text on it, so we can get to some other interesting stuff. I am going to create, you probably already saw this coming, but we have a const drawer. And this is where I'm going to call the createDrawerNavigator function. Okay. And actually before this, I'm going to write a function that will help us customize our drawer content, because I wanted to show the drawer content scroll view, the item list, and the item in action. So I'm going to call this custom drawer content. And yeah. So I'm going to return again. Drawer content scroll view. And if you remember, we had this wrap everything else within it. And you might also remember that we had this interesting thing on this side, so we have an ellipse and then we have props. And if we're going to do this, again, what this means is that the scroll view is going to have all the props that we have made in the component. So this means I also have to pass in props to this function. All right, so now I'm going to do our drawer item list. I think this should look slightly familiar based on the example that I was giving earlier. So this item list, I'm going to add, again, props to this. And yeah, so I'll kind of describe it all and show it kind of in action in a second. I just want to kind of get this down. So now I'm going to add the drawer item component, and the drawer item component will add additional items to your drawer content. So I'm going to add two more items, two more like unnecessary items, but I just wanted to show what it does. So I'm going to label it. So drawer item contains two props, label, or in this case, label, and also I'm going to have another on press. Okay, so I'm just going to show that we can close door. So one thing to note here is that this actually isn't enough. We have to add props.navigation.close door. All right, and then I'm going to add one more drawer item, except I'm going to toggle it this time so you guys can see what it's like to toggle versus close versus open. Okay, so this will be how we customize our content. And I think, and I will show it more in action later and kind of change things around so that you can see everything that's going on. All right. Last, I just wanted to remind myself that I need to export my drawer. So I'm going to create one more function and I'm going to call it my drawer. And this is where all the previous like drawer dots, that stack.navigator, stack.screen comes into play. So we have turn again. And then I'm going to do drawer.navigator. This is going to hold our screen. So drawer.screen, as you know from our previous examples, is going to take a name, and name I'm going to call it Wilderness Explorers. And then again, I'm going to have a component. Scroll down, component, which is going to be in curly braces, not in quotation marks, because we are using a JavaScript function inside JSX. And we also have another drawer screen, which is our profile. So I'm just going to call it my Explorer profile, and then make sure that the component says profile. All right, so that was a lot of code, but now I'm going to kind of play around with it and show you what all these different things do. But first, I have to import my drawer in app.js from drawer.js. Perfect. And I'm going to replace this guy right here. All right, so take a look at the simulator on the right. She is refreshing. Okay, so right now it says I am on the Wilderness Explorer screen. So we are on the Wilderness Explorer screen. I'm going to open drawer, and then this shows up. Perfect. And then I can also click my Explorer profile, for example. Yeah. All right, so one thing that we're actually missing, like one thing that you might know on VS Code is that we had two other additional drawer items right here that I highlighted. We had a closed drawer and a toggle drawer, and it doesn't show up here anymore. And that is because within our drawer.navigator, we actually have to add in our prop. Because remember how drawerContent is a prop? Well, now I'm going to make sure that we have it correctly. So I have props, and this props, and then we have custom drawerContent, which is the function that we created earlier. And then again in curly braces. Okay. Oh, I forgot. I forgot one here. Okay. So now, okay, yeah, so we're on the profile screen right now. And if you remember, on the profile screen, I didn't add any buttons on here. So that's kind of annoying because maybe I should have. But yeah, so I'm just going to open Expo again so we can go back to the original page. Okay, so I'm going to drawer. Now we have closed drawer and toggle drawer. So one thing to note is that what allowed for that to happen is that we had to make sure our props contained this custom drawer content, and also that custom drawer content had to pass in all the props. So that's what this dot dot, or that's what the ellipses props means here. Yes, and let's just explore what happens. So if I click Wilderness Explorer screen, I come here. If I toggle it, it also comes out. I can also do closed drawer. Oh, uh-oh. Oh, it's because I wrote closed door instead of closed drawer. Oops. Should fix it. Okay, so I'm going to close it, and it works exactly like how we want it to. Are there any questions about the code? I think it was a little bit confusing. Okay, if not,
There's one in the chat.
okay. Wait, was props a function there? Yeah, so props was an argument. Wait, to our, wait, so where are you talking about specifically, like down here? If so, it's like what Jody and Einar said, it was a parameter that we used, and our function custom drawer content, as you can see, takes in this props argument. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so yeah, both Jody and Einar are correct. All right, so then that is it for our drawer navigator if there's no more questions. Oh my gosh, what is, that picture just can't show up. Okay, so now we have just one more last poll about drawer navigator, and the question is, what is a drawer or what is drawer content? And I feel like some of these answers could be correct, but I want you to stick to the very basic definition. Yeah. it like 20 more seconds or 15 more seconds. I'm going to end it. So, wow, the results do be everywhere. But like I said before, some of these are correct, or like are correct in an indirect way. So let me just explain. Part A, state of drawer content, that is actually incorrect. And that's because it's a prop. And remember how in the beginning of our workshop today, we talked about the difference between state and prop. Prop is being passed from the outside of the function, whereas state dictates what's going on within that within the function itself. And drawer content is a prop, not a state. So B is correct. It's a prop for rendering our drawer content. C, it's a way to customize content, is correct, but it is only correct if you use its additional components within drawer content. So, but that's not always required, or that's not always what we need. So like, for example, in our demo, I had like drawers scroll view. That scroll view is a way to customize their content, but that's not needed and that's not required for us to make a functional drawer navigator. And then the last one, a similar idea. So I have a component called drawer scroller, but in actuality, it's a little bit less detailed or less specific than that. It's more general about drawer content. Okay.
All right. So we're gonna wrap up with a couple more demos. I know this has been a very long workshop, but the next thing I want to talk about is nested navigators. So in most apps, you're not just looking at a single navigator. Like it's not just a tab navigator or not just a stack navigator. So now we're going to learn how to put a stack inside of a tab navigator. And the syntax is pretty similar to before, but just instead of passing in a screen to the component prop, we pass in another navigator. Yeah, so something to note is that each navigator keeps its own history and that the inner navigator takes precedence over an outer navigator. So for example, if you have two stack navigators, one stack inside of another, and you hit go back, the go back refers to the inner stack navigator first before the outer stack navigator. And in theory, you can have lots of nesting, like you can put a tab navigator inside of a stack navigator, inside of a stack navigator, and so on. But both as a developer and as a user, that gets confusing. So try not to nest navigators too deeply. So I'm going to have a demo for that. So to start off, I have the same setup as before. I just copied over the stack navigator. So we have a home screen, which is this one, and then a profile screen, which is this component. And both of these are passed into this stack navigator. So if I click between the two, then I have the stack navigator. So my goal next is to create a tab navigator so that on one tab, I have this stack that has the Explorer and Explorer profile page. And then in the other tab, I have a settings screen, which is just here. It's the same thing as before, except that it says my Explorer settings screen instead. So right now, my navigator is just stack, but I'm going to replace this with a tab navigator. And inside the tab navigator, I'm going to have two screens. So one screen is the stack. that is going to be the Explorer side of the tab. And then the important part here is that the component is this stack navigator that I already created. And then similarly, I can just add another screen, and you can mix screens and navigators together. So I'm going to do that. Settings screen. And if I save this, oh, oh, right. I just named it Explorer again. Yes, so now you can see here I have these two tabs on the outside, and then in the Explorer tab, I can go between these two screens as well. So that's nested navigators. If anyone has any questions, just drop in the chat. And next I have a few some bonus content if you want to change the styles on different things on your navigators. So when you create your app, you probably want to change the styles. So let's start with changing the heading styles. You can do this with the options prop on a screen. So I'm going to take the Wilderness Explorers screen and then set the options to be a object. If you look in the React navigation docs, it'll tell you all the possible options, but I'm just going to pull out a few to show as an example. So some useful options are the header style prop. And this takes in an object as well. And this is a style object. So it has all the like CSS properties, like background color, probably height and width, things like that too, in header style. And then so header style refers to the header as a whole. So if I refresh, you can see that the background of the header has become orange. And the input here doesn't have to be words describing a color. It could also be the hex code. If you want to change the text styles, you use header title style. And then I can do things like change the font weight. Let's do it bold. And then let's make the color white. So if I save now, and then I can see that the text changed to bold, and then it also became white. But if I click into go to Explorer profile, notice that the heading style did not change. So I could just copy these options over into the My Explorer profile screen. But a better way to do this is to use the screen options prop on the navigator. So this is one way to get both of them to look the same. So I could just copy it over, and then it becomes the same header style. But a better way to do this is to replace, what am I saying? Screen options. Replace this with the screen options prop. So I'm going to copy it over. And then I'll just delete these. Oh, okay. I think, oh, it can't be empty. Let's put empty objects. I could just take out the whole thing, or I should take out the whole thing, but I want to show something else later. Yeah, so now if I pass in these screen options, that means this will apply to all the screens within this navigator. So if I go between, I'll see that the styles are applied on both screens. But if I change the header style here, let's say I want a background color of red instead. So here I have the screen trying to set a background color, and then I also have the navigator trying to set a background color. So which one will win? The screen will win because it's more inner, it's more specific. So this option will always beat this option. Cool. The next thing that you'll probably want to do is replace the tab bar text with icons. So instead of having these text labels, I'm going to replace them with icons. So first, I'm going to remove these two labels. And to do that, I'm going to use the tab bar option, show label. So these props, they're all listed in the documentation. There's more than just show label, but this is one of them. Okay. Oh yeah, this is a mistake that was in a previous poll. You got to put two curly braces. Yeah. So now if I put show label as false, you won't see the labels anymore. Cool. Okay, next I want to replace the icons. So to do that, well, first I want to import some icons. So in a previous workshop, we learned how to import icons. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to use the library that comes installed with Expo already called Expo Vector Icons. Okay, and that will make that available for me to use. And then next, I am going to use the options prop again, but this is a tab screen option. And then one of the possible ones is something called tab bar icon. So tab bar icon, it takes in a function. And this function returns the component that you want to show as icon. So I'm going to do the icon that I just imported. Curly braces. I think it's the same thing. Ugh, okay. I did this to myself. Okay, yeah, so now I see an icon here instead. I'm going to do the same thing for the settings screen, except instead of the Explore icon, I'm going to do the settings icon. Maybe it's setting. Wait, unexpected token. Oh, I didn't copy the whole thing. Whoops. Okay, yeah, so I have two icons here. But something I don't really like is that they don't really show which tab you're on. It just shows the same icon whether it's clicked or not. So I'm going to change that. So the reason this is a function is because we're something that's made available is whether or not the icon is focused, or not icon, whether or not the screen is focused. So if the screen is focused, then we get this focused variable set to true. And this is just, it's part of the API. It's just passed in for you as part of React navigation. So I'm going to change this. So if focused is true, then return a different color material icon. So instead of black, I'm going to make it a red one instead. Let's do an else. And then we're just going to do the same thing for the other one. So I'm going to change the color to be red. And you could change it to another icon even if you want. But it doesn't, yeah, it's up to you. Okay, yeah, so now it shows I'm on this Wilderness Explorer page. So this turns red, and then if I click on this one, then this turns red. Cool. Yeah, I guess we have a little more time, so I'll just show you, like this is not usually how you would write this function in React. It's much more common to use a, I think it's called a ternary expression. It's like, it means the same thing, but it has a few more lines, so you'll see it more often. The way it looks like is you have the Boolean, the thing that could be true or false, and then you ask a question like, is focus true? And if it is true, then return this thing. Otherwise, the otherwise is this colon, return the other thing. Okay, wait, I will format it. Oh, okay, something is wrong. Return focused. Do these need parentheses? They might. I'm gonna put parentheses just in case. I don't think it is though. Options.
Is it, or do you have too many curly brackets? I can't tell. Like under tab bar icon, there's a like what? Yeah.
Yes, you're right. There's one too many curly brace. Yeah. So this is like a more common way you'll see like this used, like you have focus question mark component component. So this is like another way to write it that's like slightly shorter and I think more common. But it might, yeah, but the other way is fine too. Do I need the word return? Here, okay, yeah, so yeah, if you have this if statement, you do need the word return. But if you don't have the if statement, then you don't even need, or you should not put these curly braces too. Yeah. It's slightly shorter, and like programmers just love having slightly shorter code, even if it's can be a little more confusing to learn. Yeah, and you should, in this case, you also should not put a return here. Yeah. You could do something like this becomes a bracket and then you put a return and then you copy this stuff in here. I'm pretty sure this is also okay, but it's like slightly longer. All right. Present. Yeah, so everyone, thank you for coming. Next session, we'll be talking about asynchronous programming and component lifecycle. So if you don't know what that means, that's the perfect opportunity to come to this workshop. Also, don't forget to fill out our feedback form. We will have a raffle for Amazon gift cards for people that fill it out. So fill it out. Woo. Oh, yes. And oh, yes, you could have the ternary operator inside the color property. That would also work.
Thanks, everyone.